over equilateral triangles. Okay, so this is the second part to this section. So this is your last section before your test. Okay, so yeah. Okay. Then you can take it the next day. So tomorrow you'll start your chapter 4 review, and you'll also review on Monday. Okay? And then your test will be on Tuesday. Okay, and I did have that up on the board yesterday, if you look at the board. So looking at our notes for today, so it's similar to what we did yesterday, but now we're working with equilateral triangles. So an equilateral triangle has 3 congruent sides. Okay, so all 3 of your sides are going to be congruent. Now the equilateral triangle theorem states a triangle is equilateral if and only if it is also equiangular. Okay, meaning all of your angles are the same. Okay, so in an equilateral triangle, all 3 of your sides are congruent and all 3 of your angles are congruent. Now, since all 3 of your angles are congruent, those angles will have a measure of 60 degrees. Okay, so since they're all equal, to find that, you take 180 and divide it by 3. That's going to be 60. Okay, so if you know all 3 of your sides are the same, that means all 3 of your angles will be 60 degrees. So we're going to go through some problems involving equilateral triangles. Now we do need to be careful because some of these problems are also isosceles triangles. Okay, so we need to make sure we know the difference between the two. So this first one, okay, I have markings on all 3 sides. Okay, that means all 3 sides are congruent, right? Meaning all 3 of your angles are congruent. If all 3 of those angles are congruent, what is the angle measure? 60. So how can I set up an equation to find x? Yes. Okay, all 3 of your angles have to be 60 degrees because it is an equilateral triangle. From here, I'm going to divide both sides by 6, and x will be 10. Now, if you didn't remember that all 3 of your angles are 60 degrees, you could label all 3 as 6x, okay? Then, all 3 of those angles have to add to be 180. So you could also say 6x plus 6x plus 6x equals 180. Okay, so that's a different way to think about it if you don't remember that all of your angles have to be 60 in an equilateral triangle. And you should still get x is 10. All right. Number 2, in this one, we have all 3 of our angles congruent. Now, if all 3 of your angles are congruent in a triangle, that means all 3 of your sides are congruent in your triangle. Okay, that's going back to this first statement here. So, if it's an equiangular triangle, it must also be equilateral. So I can label all 3 of my sides congruent to each other. Now, if those sides are congruent, I can set their measures equal to each other. So I can set 6x minus 5 equal to 5x. Okay, I'm going to subtract 6x. So I have negative 5 equals negative x. Okay, I don't want that x to be negative, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. Okay, so you should get x is equal to 5. Questions on the first two? All right, do number 3. Okay. What? 7 and 8?
She's done with like the whole sheet.
Oh,
4, 5.
good job. Sure. All right, number 3. All 3 of your angles are congruent. Okay, since all 3 of those angles are congruent, all 3 have to be 60 degrees. Okay, so since angle K is 60, I can set that equation equal to that. So we can set 3x equal to 60. Divide by 3, and x should be 20. Now again, you could have said 3x plus 3x plus 3x equals 180. That would work too. Okay, looking at number 4. Okay, number 4, all 3 of your angles are congruent. I know it's hard to see, it's really little, but it does show that all 3 of those angles are congruent. So that means all 3 of them are 60. Okay, since all of your angles are congruent, that means all of your sides are congruent. And that was actually labeled in this one. Since those 2 sides are congruent, that means those 2 sides are equal. So we can set 4x equal to 40. Okay, and you'll divide by 4, and x will be 10. Okay, number 5. This one, I have these 2 sides congruent, and I have one of my angles is 60 degrees. Okay, now, right now it shows this is an isosceles triangle. So what I want to do is find what these 2 other angle measures are to see if it's equilateral. Okay, so if I take 180 minus 60, I get 120. And if I divide that by 2, I do get 60. Okay, so that means those other 2 angles would have to be 60. Now, since all 3 of those angles are 60 degrees, that means all of those sides are equal or congruent. Okay, so I can mark that last side there with that dash, showing that they are congruent. Now, since my x value is part of a side, those 2 sides are now congruent to each other. So I can set their measures equal to each other. So we have 3x plus 8 equals 4x minus 4. Okay, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I have 8 equals x minus 4. Add 4. And you should get x is equal to 12. Okay, questions on these first few problems here? Not too bad. Equilateral triangles, everything's equal. So, all right, so I'm going to skip over 6 and go to 7. Okay, number 7, we want to find the measure of angle y. So that's this angle here. And we want to find the measure of side YZ. So that length there. So now what I have in this triangle is that this angle is 60 and these two sides are 8. Well, since those two sides are congruent, we know it's an isosceles triangle as of right now. Okay? That means these two angles have to be congruent, right? That's what we went over yesterday. So to find those angles, since I have to solve for y, all three of those have to be 180 together. So I can take 180 and subtract 60. That's 120. Now since both of those are congruent, we just want to divide that by 2, and that is 60. Okay, so both of these angles here must be 60 degrees. So angle y is 60. Now we also need to find the side YZ. Well, if all three of those angles are equal, what are all the sides? Equal, and they are 8. Yes. So YZ would be 8 inches. Questions on 7. You do want to check to make sure that it is equilateral before you keep going. Next one in number 8, we want to find the measure of angle M, so this angle here, and side PN. Okay? Now in this one, I'm given that these two angles are congruent. Okay? So to find that angle M, all three of those have to add to 180, right? So I can take 180 and subtract the angle I know. Okay, that angle is 120. Okay, when I do that, I get 60. Okay, now that 60 degrees is split between those two angles there. Okay, so I still need to divide it by 2. Okay, so that 60 degrees has to be split between those two angles. So each angle has to be 30. So angle M is 30. So this is not an equilateral triangle. What type of triangle is this? What did we do yesterday? What type of triangle is this? Isosceles. Okay, this is an isosceles triangle. Since both of those angles are congruent, both of these sides are congruent. Okay, so since this side is 11 centimeters, this side must also be 11 centimeters. So side PN would be 11 centimeters. Questions on those two on the bottom? All right, on the back, Number 9. So number 9, we want to solve for the variable x and this variable y. So first looking at our angles, since that's where x is. Okay, I have 2x and 2x. I also have that these two sides here are congruent. Now, working with that isosceles triangle theorem we did yesterday, since those two sides are congruent, their opposite angles are congruent. Okay? Since this angle is 2x, okay, this angle also must be 2x. Okay, since those angles are congruent, angle C would also be 2x. Now, if all three of those angles are 2x, they would all be congruent, wouldn't they? Okay, if all three of those angles are congruent, what does that angle measure have to be? 60. So to find x, I can set 2x equal to 60. Yes. And divide by 2. And you do get x is 30 then. Okay, now I want to work with the sides, okay, to find y. This y right here is talking about this side BC. So, since all three of those angles are congruent, all three of your sides have to be congruent. And since I'm given this side AB is 3 inches, and this side BC is 4y minus 5, those two sides are congruent, so we can set them equal. So we have 3 is equal to 4y minus 5. Now, some of you yesterday were getting confused. So when you are working with angles, angles can only be equal to other angles, okay? You cannot set 60 equal to one of the sides, okay? Sides are equal to sides, angles are equal to angles, okay? They're two different things, they're two different types of measures, okay? Angles are measured in degrees, sides are measured in different units, so like centimeters, inches, meters, feet, stuff like that, okay? Angles are always in degrees. You cannot combine those or set them equal to each other. Okay? Just clarifying. So to finish solving here, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I have 8 equals 4y. Divide by 4. And you do get y is equal to 2. All right. Questions on 9. All right, looking at 10. Again, we want to solve for x and y. Okay, so in number 10, I have these two sides are congruent to each other. Okay, I am also given this angle measure and this equation for that angle measure. Now, since those two sides are congruent, their opposite angles have to be congruent by that isosceles triangle theorem we did yesterday. So this angle right here has to be congruent to this angle right here that's labeled as 6x plus 8. Now, since both of those angles are congruent, this angle is 6x plus 8, so this angle also must be 6x plus 8. Okay? So that angle measure there is 6x plus 8. Now if I want to solve for x first, okay, you don't have to, you could have solved for y first, but I'm going to solve for x first. What do all three of your angles have to equal? 180. So you could do this two different ways. First way, you could add up all three of these and set it equal to 180. Okay, so we have 6x plus 8. That's the first angle. Second angle, 6x plus 8. Third angle, don't forget about it. You need all three to be 180. Okay, don't just take two or one of the angles. All three angles have to add to be 180. So we'll add 80. That's equal to 180. Okay, so I'm going to combine like terms here. So I have 6x and 6x. That's 12x. Okay, we have 80, 8, and 8. That is 96. And that's still equal to 180. Subtract 96 from both sides. So we get 12x is equal to 84. Divide both sides by 12. And x is 7. Okay, so that's one way. So you always want to remember all three of your angles add to be 180. The other way, you could take 180 and subtract 80, right? Since these two angles are congruent, that remaining 100 has to be split between those two angles. Okay, so each of these angles would have to be equal to 50. Okay, then you could set 6x plus 8 equal to 50 and solve for x. Okay, so that's the other way you could go about doing that one. So now that I found x, that's 7. We also want to find y. Now both of those sides, we have congruency labels on. Okay, since they're congruent, they are equal. So we can set their equations for those sides equal. So we'll have 4y minus 2, that's that first side, is equal to 2y plus 2. That's that second side. I'm going to subtract 2y from both sides of my equation. So I have 2y minus 2 equals 2. Add 2 to both sides. So we have 2y equals 4. Then divide by 2. And y will be 2. And again, your sides cannot equal your angle. Okay? So you should not be setting your side equal to 50. Okay? Sides equal sides, angles equal angles. Any questions on 10? I want you guys to do number 14. 14. That one. Your homework page?
Did we have these trips before? Oh, the girl.
What?
You never even answered me. You know? No.
No, that's not right.
Can I have it down? Come on. I need to know J. He's singing everything. Oh.
Do you have a dollar bill?
Wow.
No.
That this little thing, like, it has the federal bank in it. We never knew that.
He has a what?
Okay, so this is Kansas City,
It's made in that federal bank.
made in that federal bank. It's all in the dollars.
That's cool.
I know we actually learned something in that class besides stupid golf.
Sorry.
Anything baseball, anything
Hey,
football.
relax.
That's what at least we can do stuff.
Yeah, so it goes Sierra, me, Jalen.
Yeah.
That's a light class. Oh, and Maddie's right there. Marsha's right behind me. Sheila. I'm hoping that
I always forget she calls you Marsha. I like it takes me a second to like register who you are to her.
Should I go like Snow White?
Oh my god, that picture.
Did you do number 14?
Yeah, I did. I finished it.
Okay.
It's loading.
Oh, it's like the silver
Yeah.
type color.
Guys, I'm going silver.
My cousin did that.
Did it look good?
She had to go through so many treatments because her natural hair color is like my color. It's not blonde.
Yeah, I know.
And she dyed it already, so her hair was like deep red like before that. So she had to go through lots of bleach treatments, and then she only had it for like a month, and then she changed it again. I was like, that's dumb.
See, I dyed. Oh, I dyed it during August. Like mid. I think it was it was before the first football game because I had it before the first football game. Because we were trying to do it like really bright, and it didn't really work out. So like part of my hair is really bright and part of it's not, but it still looks okay. So I have to wait till like February, March.
Yeah.
Goes to New York with silver hair. That'd be cool.
All right, so 14. You're given that these two sides are congruent. Okay? Meaning these two angles across from those sides are also congruent. Okay? So, since this angle right here is 2x plus 3, this angle is also 2x plus 3. This angle right here is 90. Okay? So again, two different ways you could do this. First way, all three of your angles have to be 180. So you can add up all three of those and set it equal to 180. Okay? So this is one way. So I'll combine like terms. I have 2x and 2x. That's 4x. I have 93 and 3, so plus 96 is equal to 180. Subtract 96. I have 4x equals 84. So x will be 21. Now the second way. Since you have that 90-degree angle, you can take 180 minus 90. Okay, that's 90. And that 90 degrees has to be split between those two congruent angles. So each of those angles would be 45. So you could take that angle, 2x plus 3, and set it equal to 45 as well. Okay? So then you have 2x equals 42. And again, you would get x equals 21. Okay, so either one of those ways would work for this problem. Um,